This is Therapy-ish. Hi everyone, my name is Asha Creary and we are back with another episode of Therapy-ish, and I'm so excited you guys have decided to join us again for another episode. And today I have Miss Tameka Turner. We are going to talk a little bit about navigating foster care and CPS through mental health. And so Tameka, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you practice, and then the population you serve?
Okay. I'm Tameka, and I work with CPS foster care kids in the foster homes as well as residential treatment centers. The population I serve is mostly adolescent, and the office, I currently work at Kenyatta Black Counseling, and it's located in Arlington, Texas.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. So, again, in today's topic, we will discuss the mental health barriers with families in foster care, how to get the most of your mental health care when CPS becomes involved, and the best approach for supporting children in foster care with various mental health resources. So, let's get into it. So, what are some of the barriers you see in working with foster care kids?
Their ability to be able to trust is the biggest barrier. Them losing hope with the disconnect from family, trying to identify and understand their reasoning for being placed in foster care. Forgiveness is a big one. Their need for the emotional support and understanding is a big issue for them in processing their thoughts and feelings.
Okay, that's fair. I'm glad you said the statement around the ability to trust and their loss of hope. And the reason I thought that those two things were key is because, like, I work with foster care kids too, or adopted kids. Let me refresh that. A lot of the kids that I work with are adopted kids or next of kin kids, where the grandparents or the cousins or the aunts are taking care of the kids. And a lot of times we don't really talk about the trust part of it and the hope part of it and being able to say that out loud. We know that they already come in with their own set of issues with trust, like you said, not only from just their educators, but from their family, from the system, but also struggling with trusting that the therapist is going to be a safe place for them because they probably tried to trust the CPS worker or they were taught not to. And they just don't have that trust there, or they never learned what trust looks like. And then on the flip side of that, losing hope is so big because kids they look forward to adults being able to take care of them and them getting their needs met. But then when it falls through so many times, they do begin to lose hope. And when they say, okay, well, the system is going to help, or this is what they say the system is going to do after they've established that trust and it doesn't happen, it is easy for people to lose hope. So, especially kids.
It is.
So, okay. Have you witnessed or worked with children who have experienced additional abuse in the foster care system? And if so, how do you navigate that as a mental health professional trying to establish trust?
I have worked with kids not being physically abused, but mentally and emotionally abused in the home. Sometimes with kids, working with kids, and them coming from parents that didn't know how to communicate with them. They also receive that in their foster home and sometimes in the RTCs. They do receive where, the caregiver is not able to fully provide the emotional support that they need. And it comes from the caregivers not knowing how to communicate or even knowing what healthy relationships are, because they feel like because they know everything, or it's because I say so, or because I have experienced this, they are not letting the kids have a voice. So in that area, yes, they do, experience the abuse emotionally, because sometimes they don't know how to approach them. They don't know how to talk to them. And considering the environment, whether it's an RTC or a foster home, depending on how many kids are there, if the parent is fully invested in the child, all that plays a big part in how the child will feel comfortable to show up.
Okay.
in the home.
That's fair. I do see that. I have seen that a lot when I worked in the education system as a school counselor, where with the teachers, it was always a power struggle with
Mhm.
working with kids, and that has always been a constant thing throughout any industry where people are working with children, and the struggle really comes from not taking time to get to know kids. And so, because I really don't know you, I'm just looking at you from a surface level. I know what's best for you because,
Yeah.
like you said, I've seen this and I know what this looks like, i.e., I am the person's going to tell you what's best for you. And like you said, the kids don't have a say. They don't have a bark in the fight.
They don't. And every kid is not the same. So you can't approach the kid the same. So just because this worked for one, it may not work for the other kid. And a lot of people do not care to learn or read or, really try to understand them. It's like my way or no way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no understanding, no listening to, there's no healthy communication, healthy relationship anywhere. It's just one way, and that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. I have a few cousins that were I have a no I, yeah I have a few cousins that were adopted, and as a family we loved on them, and still to this day we still try to reach out and love on them in their adulthood, even through the things that they are doing for themselves in their distance sometimes. But it was never a situation where, at least from my perspective, where I had to come in and say, you don't do this, you don't do that. This is what you do over here in this family. It was always what do you need?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's go for a walk. Let's de-escalate this situation between you and your parent right now. And let's kind of work through that. So what should families do when they've been forced to give their children up to the foster care system or CPS while completing all of the mandates requested by the caseworker? So, like, if I was a parent and my kid was taken, what should I do?
The first thing I feel like that is highly recommended is seeking therapy for yourself, for you to understand, because of course this is going to be different for you, and it's going to be overwhelming at times because sometimes you're going to feel like you're not good enough. So seeking therapy for yourself in order to understand, where things went wrong, how you can mend the relationship with your child, because that's going to be important, because your child is feeling away because they feel like you didn't fully show up for them. You didn't do what you were supposed to do as a parent, and you're having them live with strangers or even go somewhere where they are, not comfortable with. So you seeking therapy for you, also requesting that, you all could have some sort of family therapy in the process, and making sure that you complete everything that CPS is asking you to do. And I know sometimes we get in a hurry or we get discouraged, but take your time and do what you're supposed to do so we won't repeat the same mistakes.
It's hard though. It's very hard because so on the back end, I think I shared it with you like off the scene a while back where I mentioned that I work with CPS and I have some contracts on the back end where we do get the clients that have to come in for therapy or have to come in and do parenting classes. And this is gonna sound real bad, but this is from a business perspective. So we get some clients that come and then they don't show up. Or they schedule because we give them the full on flexibility to do so, and they don't show up. And so, like, as a business owner, we have to discontinue because we pretty much don't make money when you don't show up. Right. But on the flip side, we really actually thoroughly enjoy working with those clients, but we don't get to see the fruition sometimes because sometimes it is not followed through. And then we also have to provide all that documentation to the CPS caseworker, the call logs, all the things involved. And it could make you look even worse if the clinician or the practice or the place where you're getting services discontinues it.
Right.
Because, the state says after 2 missed appointments, refer them back to their caseworker, and that's that.
Right.
And so that's one side of it that, like, it's hard because, again, there are so many requirements that come with parents who have to go through CPS, whether they got their kids still or whether they've gotten them taken. Either route is still a lot of moving pieces.
And then we also have to see if the parents are fully invested. The parents have to be fully invested and willing to take the necessary steps in order to get their kids back. And a lot of times, majority of the time, I'm going to say, parents are not fully invested and are not willing to do the work. And it's easier for them to stay on this side and, pretend that they are doing, because I have parents that will pretend that they're doing and talking to the kids and blaming it all on CPS, that they're not doing their job. But in reality, they're not keeping up with the things that they're supposed to keep up with as a parent. So we have to see if the parents are fully invested. And I personally believe that from the beginning, it needs to be a contract. I'm invested and this is what you're going to have to, this is what I'm have to do. And I'm going to be responsible for doing this versus, wasting time and not fully doing what you're supposed to do as a parent, because you're wasting everybody's time. Because it's easier for the kid to understand, okay, right now mom is not in a good position and mom is not willing to work, versus mom continuing to lie and then
or dad
and we're having to come in to fix that because we're still breaking the kid.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for your child. So I feel like you have to commit to being fully invested. And if you're not going to be fully invested, say that up front and that's it.
Okay. So then what can I as a parent advocate for? Because a lot of times we know the system and we know the caseworkers are overworked, and that's a whole different question.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a good caseworker and you just seem to be in a place, like you said, where you're just struggling to get everything, they're telling you got to do drug testing, you have to do the therapy, you have to do group, and you still got to work full time because they're telling you have to keep a place to stay, and you got to buy groceries, and you got to find daycare if you don't have it. Like all these things, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
This is basic parenting, by the way, but it's hard when you're coming from an environment where you didn't have it. You were thrown at 16, and here we go repeating the cycle. But with that, like, how do they advocate for what they need, especially when they have a really good caseworker?
Ask for help. A lot of times parents don't ask for help because they feel like, for one, CPS is in place for a reason. And a lot of times people feel like when CPS is entering your home, it's a bad thing. Like, you can't trust anybody, and then you teach your kids that, which is not the case because they're there for you to build a relationship with. So ask for help. If you don't understand, ask them to explain to you, and ask for the support. Support is in place. Everything is out there if you ask for it. But we can't read your mind, so we don't know. Ask for what you need. Make a list of things. Even sit with her to say, okay, what I need to do. How do I need to start? Where do I need to start? And when she gives you the list, if it's something on there that you don't understand, ask, how can you get this? What steps do you have to take and go from there?
Yeah.
But if you don't open your mouth and use your words to ask for help, and realize that CPS is in your life to help you reunite with your kids, and not you feel bitter or you angry and you just not want to do it, do what you got to do and ask. It's there.
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't realize there are a lot of resources with CPS. Like, if you end up in a situation where CPS has now become involved with your kids, CPS will help you get education. They will help get you connected with Texas Workforce Commission if you're in Texas, right? And then they will also kind of facilitate the conversation between you and a caseworker at Texas Workforce Commission to be able to help you find a job if you're a parent that doesn't have a job.
I have seen it too, where the caseworker has paid rent for
absolutely
the parent.
Gas cards, groceries.
Still check on them. Sometimes even provide cell phones. I have seen that. But if, a lot of people don't know because they feel like it's a bad thing, and they shut down after CPS come in.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to say, okay, accept accountability, because whatever they came in for, it was for a reason. So you have to be accountable for your actions.
Even if it was the malicious neighbor that just don't like you.
Right. You still have to say, you know what? Okay, I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
And they're here, so let me use my resources. And it's basically you coming up Because
Yeah. I've seen so many situations, and I know this is an aside. I just wanted to make a note of it. Like, where when I worked in a school system, CPS would come up to the school.
yep,
And so the parents will come to the school so livid with us. And we're like, we can't tell CPS that they can't come in here and talk to
mm-hmm,
these kids. So if CPS come in here and they talking to your kids, it is because they are doing an investigation.
right,
And they do not have to notify you of anything. This is not the police pulling your kids over. This is not that situation. CPS, although they don't carry guns and badges per se, they have a whole lot more authority over your child than you do.
right,
The day they get called is the day where your rights have basically gone from your priority rights to your secondary rights, and CPS rights trumps yours.
that is correct.
So, okay. I really like this question. This is a good question. So, there's a misconception that foster care and CPS is bad. What would you say to alleviate that narrative when working with families? So, tell me your initial response.
My initial response is, yeah, they are. From my experience, I worked in a hospital, a mental health hospital, and I worked with kids from ages 5 to 17. And when kids come into the hospital, most of them are coming into the hospital from their foster homes. And that's what I'm explaining to you guys as far as the foster homes. Foster parents have a disconnect, which foster parents have to be educated as well. But if they're feeling like the kids are not listening, or they don't know how to communicate with the kid, or if the kid respond in a way, the hospital is the first place they go.
Huh.
So if the child is having trouble being placed, or the CPS worker is having problems with the kid, it's hard to get this kid placed. Sometimes we don't hear from the foster parents anymore because they're saying they can't come back to their house, and they haven't taken the proper steps to not have the kid come back to their house. And if the CPS worker is just tired or don't have time, sometimes they don't pick up their phones either. So I've seen it from both sides. And I also know that there are good CPS workers and good foster parents out there, because I have a foster parent and I love her to death. However, sometimes it's not a balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my standpoint on it.
Okay. So when I originally emailed this question, Tameka was like, no, it's not good. It's not good, right? And so I countered and I stated that, don't get me wrong, I know how hard it is to be a CPS worker, to be a caseworker, to be a foster parent, just because backstory, like, I grew up with my sister kids. And so we kind of helped raise them. And sometimes it wasn't always easy. And still, even as they are now adults, it's not always easy, because the love that they were seeking from their aunt, their uncle, their grandmother, and their grandfather was something that we couldn't necessarily give them, because we were put in this pedestal that these are all the things we're supposed to give them. But we were all still struggling ourselves with the changes that was happening every time we had another child come into the home, right?
Right.
So in my opinion, I do believe that there are some positives, because I'm going to go to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs real quick, right? Okay, so at the bottom, I don't remember this by heart, right? But y'all going to get the drift. So at the bottom, there are physiological needs, right? Which includes basic needs, food, water, shelter. Then the next two layers is going to be psychological needs, which goes into self-esteem and belongingness, right? So if the basic necessities of being a parent includes you getting food, shelter, water, you're supposed to be able to get all of your needs met. And if you have some things that are not being met, and the ones that are beneath, you can't effectively progress up this diagram, right?
Right.
So if the basic things are to provide food, water, and shelter, if that's not happening, and you're not asking for help, or you're not doing what you need to do to get the resources so that your kids are not without, yes, CPS, people look at it as a bad thing, but that is your saving grace at times.
That is.
And don't take it to a religious perspective, but like sometimes it is your saving grace. This is the moment where you literally can let somebody take care of you.
Right.
And your kids.
That's true.
Then from there, okay, well, now y'all got a place to stay. Y'all got food, y'all got shelter, and it's consistent. There are no lapses in it. You don't have to worry about anything.
Right.
Now, all you got to focus on is loving your kids, making them feel like they belong,
right?
Making them feel confident in where they can go from here,
right?
Right? And you can only do that now because you have somebody taking care of you and your kids. Again, I'm not saying go let the sister take care of you. That's not what I'm saying. But if you change your mindset around it, it can definitely be a positive.
It can.
And if you are receptive, like you said, your caseworker is going to love you. And when I say they will go above and beyond they will give you stuff that they know they're not supposed to give you.
Yes, they do.
They will literally give you everything.
They do.
And so I know that the narrative is bad, but if you go back and look at what you're supposed to do as a parent technically,
right?
The bottom is neglect.
Right.
The middle part is emotional abuse. At a certain point, right?
It is, yeah.
And so if your child is asking you to love them this way and you're saying, I own you, you're my child, things go this way, your voice doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm going to choose these people over y'all.
Right.
I'm going to choose my addiction over you. I am going to choose myself over you. At that point for a kid, it is perceived to be emotional abuse. So when these people come in here and they tell you to go to counseling, that is so now you got your basic needs. Now we're going to help you, like you said, build a connection with your kids. Right. And now I'm going to teach you how to be a better parent. Although you don't have the time to do these things, because we understand how hard it is to become a parent, you have the capacity to be better. And that's my job. My job isn't to come in here and tear you down. Yep. Now, I might be tired, and when you giving me a hard time, I'm going to give you a hard time. But my job is to make sure that you don't come back.
Right.
No matter how long it takes you. Now, we might give you 15 months or 2 years or whatever the numbers are, right? Depending on the caseworker and the situation. But it is up to you to let somebody take care of you so that you can really focus on the things you need. And if you feel like you had to put your life on hold because you had these kids, you really need to do some work.
Right.
And that is the time to do it when them CPS people give you free therapy.
Right.
With no copay.
Right. That is true.
So, what's the best approach for working with family, the next of kin family members that agree to take on the kids? Because we got to understand, everybody got their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take on somebody else's kids, you have to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially capable of the things.
Right.
No matter how much assistance you get. What would you say for a parent that is, or a family member that is considering taking over a family member's kids?
Are you ready to put in the work? Because it's going to take work. You are learning to love a child, accept a child in your home, and you have to really learn them. So it's going to be a lot of bending, and it's going to be a lot of, sometimes to where, say for instance, you already have your kids, so your kids already know.
Or you don't.
Well, and you may not. So if you have kids and they already know, then you're bringing someone else in, it's going to be different. You're going to learn and you're going to unlearn. They're going to have to unlearn a lot of things that they know too. So it's going to take a lot of work for you. So it's like, are you willing to put in the work? For the ones that don't have kids that are interested in, saying, okay, well, they can come over here. Still, are you willing to put in the work? Because it's a lot of work. I feel like, for me, to be honest with you guys, I feel like any parent, anybody that's stepping in to take in a child needs to be evaluated as far as going to therapy, challenged, and be able to keep a journal, maybe a journal with the kids, a journal even for them learning themselves. Because like I said, I'm a parent and sometimes I don't always parent correctly. So I have to go back and process and, I even ask my kids, am I being a good parent? Is it something that you need me to do differently? Did I make you feel away? They can ask me why. I do, I want to build a relationship with them. So how I was raised, we was raised is what I say goes.
Absolutely.
Or what goes on in this house, stay in this house, or, and it's not giving the child the ability to be flexible, a child to the ability to even have feelings, basically, because they feel away too. Changing environments is going to really make a child feel away, whether it's anger, anything. So we have to learn how to deal with that. So I feel like you have to, and letting someone come into your home, you have to be ready to put in the work, and you have to be willing to work on yourself and know that you're not always right.
Yeah. It's definitely a power struggle. Sometimes if that happens, it could also be a pride thing. And it could also be a thing, this is gonna sound real bad, but like don't take it as an opportunity to boast to the world on how good of a person you are because you've taken this kid in.
Right.
Because that's key. I've seen so many people that say, oh, I have an adopted child, or I have a I do foster kids. Okay.
Right.
You want a cookie?
Right. But if you're not willing, if you're not invested and not willing to do the work, it's not about you. At the end of the day, it's about the kids. And most of the time I have my foster homes, some of them are loving, and some of them, when they leave, they ready to leave and not come back. Yeah. Because of the disconnect. Yeah. And a lot of people feel like, okay, well, I feel like as a foster mom, you have to have it. You have to have it in you. Yeah. You have to have the ability to love someone else's kids too.
Or the ability to work on it if you don't.
Right.
Open to it.
Yeah, you have to be open, because if you're not open to change and you think the kids are going to come in there and say, okay, well, I see change. Kids feel your energy too. They know when you're genuine. And if you're not genuine, they're going to be basically, they're going to refuse. They're not going to do what they want to do. And that's going to cause a disruption in your home, because they know if they're not feeling welcome, they're going to do something to say, okay, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And then CPS going to be at your door.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a catch-22, right? Because the stigma within the system, one, and because they are changing some of the adoption rules, unspoken adoption rules, right? Like where in the past, like a lot of foster parents are not Black. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the kids that do go through the foster care system are Black. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of harm and trauma that comes from that, because some of the families are just not aware of some of the basics that Black kids need, right? And so some of the rules are changing to where they're trying to force more adoptions in Black families, and they are blocking adoptions and fostering for white families. Mm-hmm. Again, I understand it. I also am like, oh, that's a rock and a hard place. So I get it. But in that, there's a lot of trauma that goes into interracial fostering and adoption. Right. Especially when the basic needs are not being met or understood. Yeah. Or understood. So
that's when the education part come in. I mean, I feel like it's fair, because even with me as a parent, my kids go to school, I feel like every child doesn't learn the same. So if you're a teacher and you don't understand my child, I'm going to need you to be educated on my child. So foster care systems, all of that, I feel like educate. We're required to, as therapists, we're required to learn others' culture, before we can even work with them. I feel like that should be a necessary step for anybody that wants to take in a child that of a different race.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, if I had a kid that was Spanish speaking, we are going to make sure that they are immersed in their culture. Mm-hmm. And I'm participating. It's not going to be, hey, we finna go to this thing and I'm going to just stand over here. No, we finna have fun.
We gonna have fun. Teach me, what dish do you like? I may not, we can, if I can't cook it, we can buy it. You can show me, let's work together. Yeah. But you have to show interest in the kid in order for the kid to feel comfortable, because every time they're going to push you away. They're not going to feel comfortable. Yeah.
And then even with again, sorry, I digress from next of kin. Like with next of kin parenting and family, it is hard because you already understand the dysfunction that's happening with the family members before you take them on. And you be like, oh, these kids talk back.
Yeah, but you can't come in and look at it like that. If you're in it, you're going to have to be in it. And you have to take everything that you know from the situation and relearn it, because you can't punish them because of the situation that they're coming from. That's not fair to them.
I always say every 15 minutes is a new day. That's my saying. So when kids come in and they have their own set of issues that they're dealing with when they first walk through the door or later on through the day and they go off, let it go.
Right.
Let it go. Next of kin, let it go. Now, you can come back and say, hey, using I statements, I felt, I would like, I'd prefer, and we can find compromise there.
Right.
But I'm going to honor you, but I also hope that you can honor me too.
That's true.
Okay. What's the best approach for working with families who do not like their foster care kids?
I would say be honest. Be honest and say that we're not a match, or this isn't going to work for me, or I feel like I cannot provide everything he or she needs. It's simple. I mean, but we have people in it for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
So they'll be willing to take a challenge because they feel like the worse the behavior, the worse the attitude is, the level will change. They'll be specialized. So, that's a good thing for them to benefit from. But they don't realize that in the process, they are doing more harm than good because it's no connection there.
Yeah.
So be honest and say, you know what? We're not a good match. This is what I'm looking for, and not take in someone that you know that you can't handle. Or, if you don't want a specialized kid and you want someone that's basic, that's what you ask for.
Mm-hmm. So then, okay, so you said it's simple, be honest, right? Cool. Mm-hmm. You get a kid, it's not what you thought. Mm-hmm. And you called. Mm-hmm. We all know how slow it is to get that kid to be picked up.
Yes.
Sometimes, if it's not working out and they just called you at 3 a.m. and you took some kids in and you allowed them to be placed in your home, you're going to be stuck with them kids for at least 3 months.
Yeah.
At least 3 months.
Right.
If it's a situation where they're intended to be in there long term. Mm-hmm. And if it's not a good match, just because you call that CPS worker today does not mean those kids will be picked up in the next business day. That means that we're notified that this is not a good match.
Right. And
we would like it if you just be patient with us right now.
Right.
While you continue to care for these kids.
But is CPS going to be honest and say that?
What you mean?
I'm saying sometimes when you call CPS, they may say yeah or okay, but are they going to fully explain to the foster parent, you're on the list. However, we have 90 days. So during these 90 days, he or she will have to stay with you. We can't just come and remove them like that. Or are they going to be honest with them? Or are they going to say, okay, well, we're working on it, and just give the foster parents the runaround? Because sometimes it happens like that, and it causes the foster parents to be frustrated and
more abuse, more harm.
Right. And then the kid end up in the hospital because that's the easy way out.
Yeah.
So, and then they still don't have anywhere for the kid to be placed, and they have to return back to the home.
Sometimes them foster parents don't come pick them kids up.
True.
And that's not funny. It's a thing.
It is a thing. And I have CPS. Listen, I've been on both ends. So I'm calling the foster parent saying, I'm about to call CPS on you. I'm having to do a report on the foster parent because you're refusing to pick them up. But they're saying, well, no, they said this, or they said, you have to be fully honest with the foster parent so they'll know what they're getting into. So it's not going to be a next day, 7 day. It's not going to be like that. And it's not easy for you to take them and drop them off at the hospital and leave them up there, because that's another form of neglect that they will have to learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think it's easier working with smaller kids in foster care than the older kids?
I guess it depends. It depends on the situation. Smaller kids are a challenge because we're trying to teach them how to use their words, feelings, acknowledge feelings, different things like that.
Right.
With the older kids, most of the time, depending on their situation, if this is their first placement, if they've been here for a while and they're used to the system and they know how to maneuver their system, it's just going to be different. But as a therapist, I always tell my kids, I'm going to approach you how you need to be approached. What do you need me to do for you? If you
Right.
need me to be your friend, whatever you need me to do, however you need me to be, take the therapist off and just let me be that for you in order to build a rapport for them to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So they can identify their needs. Because if you haven't created a space for them, they're not going to know how to communicate. They're not going to even say, okay, I need this. It's just going to be whatever.
I do think a huge part in everything that you just said is that it's the therapist's job to support them in creating boundaries, labeling what respect looks like for them,
right,
identifying and vocalizing their needs, and also being in a position where they are vulnerable enough to share those things and helping them develop the language that they need to be able to do so.
Right.
Yeah.
But in another thing that I like to do, and this is one thing, like working in the hospital with my kids that was going into a home, I always tell them to create an all about me poster. Okay. Keep the all about me poster because it says what you don't like, your age, the movies, anything that you want somebody to know about you. Sometimes you don't feel comfortable opening up in that time, right, but you have that, in order to teach people what they need to know about you. Yeah. So from 5 years old to 17, have an all about me poster where you can go back and you can add on, take away if something is not working for you. But that builds a rapport with the CPS worker as well as the foster parents.
I like that. That's really, really good. It's very good. I would have never thought to do that. That's very good. I guess I think about like identity wheels would go with that too. Mm-hmm. So if you did an all about me poster, also like how do you identify in the world as this race, as this, are there any religions you despise or right, align with? Are there some things that, in the societal standpoint of identity could also support? Yeah, this is all about me, but this is also how I identify. So whenever you're describing who I am, be sure to use the correct identifying things.
That's true.
Because I don't want to have to correct you in public because it might not be nice.
Right. That's true. That's true.
So, okay. Well, this was a really good conversation. Thank you for joining me today. And do you have any social media handles by any chance? Nope. No. Okay, so Kenyatta Black Counseling is in Arlington, Texas. You remember the address?
I think it's 3939
South
Green Oaks.
Green Oaks, Arlington, Texas. I don't know the zip code.
I don't know the zip code, but the suite is 214.
Alrighty, so thank you guys again for joining this episode. Hopefully, if you're considering fostering, if you are a next of kin, potential foster care parent, or if you are in a situation where you are dealing with CPS yourself, hopefully you're able to take something from this. And even like as clinicians who are working with kids and working with CPS, take some of this with you so that you can help facilitate those conversations for your CPS clients if you have them, or your foster kids that you may be providing direct services to, because a lot of this stuff I ain't think about. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with kids for a while, not as in a high capacity as you have with foster, but from like a personal perspective, and then also from working directly with CPS, we get a lot of adults. We don't really get the kids. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of the adults on the back end where they're feeling overwhelmed and distraught because they feel like the caseworker's after them. And so just knowing how to find the correct language is key. So again, hopefully people can change their mindset around it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
Allow somebody to take care of you, because we as parents feel guilty for taking mommy days. We feel guilty for taking care of ourselves first. But if you're in a situation where somebody is willing to help you or willing to take care of you, because sometimes we say it ourselves. Sometimes I say it, I'd be like, I just need somebody to take care of me.
That is true.
And if you got it like that right now, let the people take care of you.
That's true.
Now, if you got a poor caseworker, advocate for yourself. Ask to speak to a supervisor. Put stuff in emails, get stuff in writing, If they tell you no, follow up with an email. Hey, I'm just following up from our conversation. I want to make sure I understand that I cannot have this resource.
Right.
Or I cannot do this thing. Or no, whatever. Or yes, thank you for supporting me with X, Y, and Z. That way you have everything in writing. So when because they're going to take you to court. You have everything that's going to show, no, they said that they could not help me with that. And here it is in writing. I did ask for help. I did these things. I did those things. I need a new caseworker. I asked for a supervisor. They met with me and they kept telling me to go back. So just making sure you have your ducks in a row.
Right. That's true.
So, all right, y'all. Bye.
Bye.